It's time for the Arizona Cardinals to be coy. What do I mean? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at LockedOnAZCards temporarily. Follow the podcast at the same place. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, leave a like. So, notifications. You get notified when you can see my big dumb face. What could be better? Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So, fun show today. Monti, Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon spoke to the media yesterday. Surprise, surprise. Didn't lead anything on. I'll discuss it a little bit. I'm not, putting a blanket over everything that was discussed. There were a couple, little quotes here, but it really made me think, okay, how can we expound upon this in the greater Arizona Cardinals organization history, recent memory, what's set to be the future? Monti Ossenfort with his first real test with pressure on him, quote unquote, expectations maybe more so, and how he's going to approach the draft, et cetera. And it's not just who you pick. It's what phone calls you take. It's what you leak to media. It's what you abstain from leaking or discussing with the media. And, it's everything in between. So it's going to be fascinating. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. What's more important, a wide receiver 2 or an RB2? Traditionally, the answer is just wide receiver 2 because that's what football is now. But I want to challenge that, not as an exercise, not as clickbait, but because of the offense the Cardinals are running. And then I'm going to dedicate a segment to Kyler Murray. He hasn't been discussed a lot. And there's something that I want to give him an accolade. And it's not, gushing over a quarterback who missed half the year, who played pretty well when he came back. It's so much more than that. And I'll discuss that in the final segment. Thanks for hanging out again. So as you can see on the overlay on YouTube, if you're listening, it says time for Cardinals to be coy. And a couple things that Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon collectively said yesterday. It's up to Marvin Harrison Jr. if he wants to, participate in his pro day. Not a big deal. That's one. They'll know who's like the quote, Tyler Drake from Arizona Sports put this video out on Twitter. Pretty much the paraphrase was, they'll know who their starters are by week 1. Jonathan Gannon said tongue-in-cheek, is a little bit of a joke. It's way too early to be discussing those things. But, the media has a job to do, get questions answered, things like that. So they did. But all in all, it's just a moment. Another one. I've done a lot of these during, pretty much from the draft of last year through, now I'm still doing it, is kind of a regroup. Kind of a where we are now as we're witnessing the Arizona Cardinals, get into the next iteration of roster building. What the Arizona Cardinals did with their last regime was weird. Smoke screens, fake reports leaked out to, different radio hosts, namely one who will remain nameless, who runs with things just to keep everybody guessing. It was stupid. It was childish, and it was completely unnecessary. Instead of building a rational organization, they decided to be, we're going to be smarter than everybody else. So we're going to leak some, stupid. So the same regime was whispering to people they were taking Kyler Murray at the Combine in 2019. There was a lot of disjointed, irrational is not even the word, like unnecessary actions taken by the front office over the last decade or so that didn't really make a lot of sense and had no direct positive outcome for the Arizona Cardinals, regardless of what its intent was. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. So pivoting now, Monti Ossenfort obviously was not afraid to trade back last year. They needed more picks, so it made sense. The trade back up surprised everybody. I don't know. I'm not sure if let's reminisce to April of 2023. You're sitting at home, maybe having a beer, like hoping that the Cardinals make the right choice. Probably thinking that Monti Ossenfort, this is just another one. Because why wouldn't you think that after what, the leash that Steve Keim got for a decade? And then you see the pick is in. And you see the banner, the logo of the Arizona Cardinals still there. It's like, I guess they are just drafting Will Anderson at 3. Cool. They, could use draft capital to move back. There were rumblings, but, Will Anderson, probably the best edge rusher in the draft. You can check that box and he'll be hopefully with the team for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And then right when Roger Goodell's walking to the stage, then you see it change to the Texans. And we're like, oh, okay. So then that's what happened. They moved back. They're like, okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to draft Jalen Carter at 11. I know that stuff came out about, the casualty, the fatality in some sort of drag race situation where he was close to. It's like, that's weird. It's going to be an offensive lineman. Like, is he going to be a wide receiver? Like, what are they going to do? And then the trade back up to 6. It's like, okay, this is new. This is calculated. This is leveraging the Arizona Cardinals draft capital they just got while keeping the prize of the 2024 first-round pick and still moving up and getting their offensive tackle for the future. Different. But also, it was the Wild West. Like, there was zero expectation for anything. Monti Ossenfort's first time, Jonathan Gannon first-time head coach. We had no idea if this was going to work. We had no idea. So while going through this season, it's like, okay, proof of concept is there. It worked. Herb Johnson Jr. was fine. Bijan Ojulari was good. Michael Wilson was good when he played. It was okay. It's positive momentum. It's not bust, maybe bust, which is what we've experienced here for a long time. 5 of the 32 draft picks that Steve Keim has made since 2019 are still on the roster. So obviously not great. So now pivoting to now, this is when it's time for the Arizona Cardinals to be coy. And they know that. This is when you answer questions very minimalistically, maybe is the correct term, where give a little info, but not enough, but also not send out just random red herring rumors and stuff that were sent from in-house. It doesn't make any rational sense. So Monti Ossenfort answering these questions like, yeah, the calls have, the amount of calls has raised as of late. Okay, yeah. So this is something that there's an art to this where you're not playing, chicken, where it's like, oh, they're not trading unless it's 4 first-round picks. You're not trading, like you're not putting chum in the water like that. And you're also saying we're not closed for business is pretty much what Monti Ossenfort said during the press conference today. We're not closed for business. There is an opportunity to leave the light on for you. Solid Motel 6 reference on a Thursday, midday. We'll leave the light on is pretty much what a coy way of saying our plan isn't set yet. Our plan isn't set yet. And that is an elevated approach from what we've experienced. Is it basic? Is it run-of-the-mill? Is it how competent GMs traditionally do business? Yes. And when I implore people to not compare what the Arizona Cardinals' journey is to other organizations, that's why. They were 24 miles behind in a 26-mile race with the last regime. So while these things seem boring, signing 2 rotational defensive and interior defensive linemen, signing Sean Murphy-Bunting, that's boring. Why aren't they going to make a splash? This is how functional organizations do things. So while it's like, well, that's his job. Do you know what it was like before him? And again, which I've said through the entirety of this season, Jonathan Gannon, Nick Rallis, Drew Petzing, Monti Ossenfort, in no particular order, their job in a vacuum was done well this year, not comparing it to the last regime. This same thing. But the comparison is necessary to show that while what Monti Ossenfort is doing seems boring, seems like he's not giving away anything, this is the boring, professional, run-of-the-mill, coy way to deal with having a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. especially one that's as coveted as the number 4 overall pick. And he's doing a damn bang-up job. What's more important? Wide receiver 2, running back 2. Does the offense run by the Arizona Cardinals sway it one way or the other? I don't know. I do know. I do know what I'm going to say. Because contrary to popular belief, I do prep for this show. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. We'll be right back right after this. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend time wishing we had more time. I do. I work 16 hours days, and I love it between both my gigs. But, the question is, what would you allocate more time for? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? And the best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. And therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're looking to start therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Super easy. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. It's free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So how Monti, Ossenfort, and Jonathan Gannon have carried themselves, this entire time. It's like they've been there before. Are they going to be the GM and head coach, respectively, for the Cardinals in 3 years? We have no idea. So the whole, they're not going to last, that's a lazy thought process. I've said this, and I think it's the most direct and existential way to say it. So far, so good. That's really all you can gauge this on. So far, so good. Very small sample size. So far, so good. And the way they've been coy, the way they're joking with the media, the way it's jovial, they know how much power they yield with that 4th overall pick. Taking it a day at a time, answering phone calls, see what's up. It would be fool's errand to not answer phone calls. So for the Marvin Harrison Jr. or bust truthers, I'm sorry that's not how things work. I'm sorry. But every day that goes by, there is more rumbling around the 4th overall pick. And guess what? If there's another team like Denver who gets a bug up their rear and no. JJ, we're going to move up to 4. Cardinals win no matter what. They still win no matter what. But the Cardinals win no matter what. Oh, little aside. Still upset that Matt Prater missed that kick against Seattle in Week 18? Still upset? Because if they were drafting 5 right now, they would have no business getting Marvin Harrison Jr. most likely. Just for the record. What's more important for the Arizona Cardinals in 2024? A wide receiver 2 or a running back 2? And let's kind of lay this out on the table here. Traditionally, in this day and age, a wide receiver 2 is obviously most important, right? It's obvious. You've got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You've got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. You've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You've got Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. For the Cardinals, they don't have a wide receiver 1. Their wide receiver 1 is Trey McBride. So say the Cardinals draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. The Cardinals like to run the ball. And this is not like, the Cardinals draft a running back at 4. And that's not where this is going, I promise. But It's just a blanket question surrounding Drew Petzing's offense, what the Cardinals have talent-wise on the roster right now, and what would be most effective to allocate the talent dispersion that would directly correlate in the Cardinals scoring more points than their opponents in 2024. And it's probably wide receiver 2. Okay. You know what? I'm removing Trey McBride from this conversation because that obviously makes wide receiver. So say for exercise example, they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. Okay. What's more important? Michael Wilson to ball out / Greg Dortch, whatever it may be, or for the Cardinals to bring in a running back who could be a massive 1-2 punch with James Conner. And I think with that, it's the latter. The Cardinals established the run. That's how they open everything up. They were top 10 in rushing last year with a terrible team. And with Kyler Murray out for 60% of the season, whatever it is, 55, 60% of the season. So if the Cardinals have, maybe it's Michael Carter, okay, and I know that you have the Michael Carter truths out there. He played for like 10 minutes with the Cardinals last year. I think that he could be their running back too. He could be, but there are so many free agent running backs who need jobs. And there are so many running backs, even though it's not a deep running back class by any stretch in the draft, you could snag one. You could grab one with, one of your third round picks. Trey Benson is a hot name that I believe, I can't remember. I think it was Trevor Sick. I can't remember. It was one of the guys at Pro Football Focus that joined me that said that he was, their favorite running back. You could draft one. Okay. What's more important or more important, if you see my spelling error that I just saw, thank you very much, on my overlay. What's more important to this team and the makeup of the offense? I think it's running back. Which position needs to perform well for the Cardinals to position themselves the best to win? Sure, Michael Wilson needs to perform if he's going to be the wide receiver 2. Health is obviously a concern. But if they have a guy who can play 35% of the snaps, who can get the same production per play that James Conner does when he touches the ball, whether it be running the ball or catching the ball, that's where the Cardinals win because that sets up everything else. That sets up play action. That sets up, if it's Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe he gets bracketed less by safety early on. Maybe there's less double coverage, because you have to respect the run game of the Arizona Cardinals. And that's not even including Kyler Murray thrown in there, which is what you want. I mean, you hope that Kyler Murray only has to run the ball 10 times all year. If you can win without it, you win without it. And that's why having a running back too would be more important than a wide receiver. Because listen, if the offensive line, like I talked about yesterday, if the offensive line levels up from compositely last year, you give them a C because from center, right guard, right tackle, you give them a B-, and you give the left side a D. So you give them a C. If they level up to a B+ this year with Jonah Williams and Evan Brown and Will Hernandez another year in the scheme and Jaldi Frolt and Paris Johnson Jr., they level up to a BB+. Kyler Murray's going to have more time to make wide receivers look better than what their talent is on paper. It's hard to play corner in this league. The more time the quarterback has to pick apart a defense, the worse the corners are going to look. If the Cardinals can run the ball and it's going to force opposing teams to stack the box, that is going to be unlocking Pandora's box to the absolute potential of this team. If the Cardinals can't run the ball, regardless of how much time Kyler Murray has to throw, you're going to have backers in coverage. You're going to have corners being able to maximize their time while covering wide receivers because they know that the run game isn't there, especially with Drew Petzing's offense, especially with the play action being such a focal point. I think RB2 is more important than wide receiver 2 to be able to position this team to score as many points as win as many games as possible next year. And of course, wide receiver 2 is more important. This is splitting hairs, but in Drew Petzing's offense, running the ball, number 1. And it's a far cry from what we were experiencing. But I think that this is how you win games in the NFL. It's going to revert back. It's cyclical. Run the ball, play action, take shots, have a tight end that balls out. That's what the scheme always was. That's what the recipe to win always was in play defense. We're starting to see it come back. Like, remember those numbers? Drew Brees was throwing for 5,000 yards every year. Eli Manning, 5,000 yards. Phillip Rivers, 5,000 yards every year. We're a far cry from that. Being able to run the ball is important, and I think especially in this offense. I would tip the scale over to RB2 more important than wide receiver 2. Kyler Murray is going to get a segment. Hasn't happened in a while. We'll discuss it next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. I mean, good luck picking the outright leader. FanDuel's got you covered. You can pick who's going to win it. I mean, how can you just pick UConn? I think they're plus 400. Like maybe you can. You're like, they're the best team. They're the best coach team. And they're gonna make it through the gauntlet. But then, you've got teams like Purdue with their big guy down low. You've got teams like Kentucky who can jump out of the gym, run fast, even though they don't play defense. You've got the Blue Bloods like Kansas, who's going to have no depth. You have Duke. You got North Carolina, who's a 1 seed. Like the possibilities are endless, and FanDuel's got you covered with all of it. And also, right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, etc. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets. Alex Lancy, Locked on Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Kyler Murray, polarizing character still to many. I don't really understand it. If you see all of the shuffling with quarterbacks, how could you not see the importance that Kyler Murray has to this team? And I want to take this off the field for a minute. Okay. Let's go down memory lane here. Could be partially nightmare lane. Kyler Murray doesn't speak during his pre-draft interview on the Dan Patrick Show. Looking at his dad, it's like out of what was it? Joaquin Phoenix was on that night show. It was on that. I don't remember if it was Colbert or whoever it was. Letter where he just wasn't there. Yeah, maybe you can compare it to that. I'm not saying Kyler Murray wasn't on drugs or anything. I think Joaquin Phoenix was, or it was a huge joke hoax, but wasn't a great start. Kyler Murray came out, got drafted, didn't look necessarily happy to be drafted by the Cardinals, didn't really know how to read the guy. Okay. Week 1 of rookie year, they were down 3 scores at halftime against Detroit, came back, and they were a Tremaine Brock interception bounce off the chest plate that would have gave the Cardinals a comeback win in Kyler Murray's first game in the NFL. You're like, okay, that's special. And then 2020, start 6-3 or start 5-3, kind of taper off. But you're starting to see Kyler Murray come into his own a little bit, not necessarily as a vocal leader, not necessarily as a guy who is, cool and comfortable in the spotlight. Some guys just aren't. Some guys are introverts, and that's not a bad thing. But you get the pressure from people wanting that person to be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or, Lamar Jackson or somebody who's a vocal, bona fide, you're a quarterback, you're a leader kind of guy. And it wasn't necessarily him. You saw guys like, Budda Baker, Larry Fitzgerald was the lead by example leader initially. Budda Baker kind of took over that role. And you're like, well, when's Kyler really going to, they lose? And, he's kind of got bad body language, people think, on the sideline in 2020. 2021, they ball out 7-0, 10-2. And then, they taper off. And it's like, oh, this is Kyler Murray's fault. Kyler Murray, and then there starts to be the, reverberations between him and Kliff. It's like, is it Kliff? Is it Kyler? And then 2022, Kyler Murray has that miraculous comeback against Vegas. And yes, I know it was the whole team, okay, where Kyler Murray pretty much puts them on their back. And they come back, they tie it with the 2-point conversion, go into overtime, scoop and score for the touchdown. Byron Murphy with the Hunter Renfrow fumble on the second play in a row. And they lose a bunch of games, and then he tears his ACL. And then it begins. Monti Ossenfort in, Jonathan Gannon in. We love Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's franchise quarterback, QB1. The reverberations of, well, that's what Kliff said about Josh Rosen. True. Kyler Murray comes in. Are they going to trade Kyler? Are they going to sit him the entire year? Comes back, leads the team, smile on his face, never been happier as an Arizona Cardinal. Now, the root of that is irrelevant for this particular segment, even though we kind of know. I mean, if you're in every day, you know what the root is. Or the one that I think is. Since Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon have taken over, Kyler Murray has become a true leader in his way as the quarterback of an NFL franchise. And for him to be able to show it to people, it was through his actions, not words. On the sideline, I know he had roster bonuses and stuff, but he would have been there anyways, okay? Around the team, even though he's not playing, watching film with Jonathan Gannon, giving insight, building rapport, building a relationship, working on it, working on himself. You could see it through, and listen, social media is tricky. It's tricky. Long were the days of him scraping everything from his Instagram. Okay. But it can be used in specific instances to show growth. Let me explain what I'm saying. And I know that this can be, manicured to make a point 100%. It definitely can. But that doesn't mean it's not true in this instance. He gave more insight into himself. Not what he's having for dinner, not, showing things like, oh, look, I'm going to go give, somebody $100. I'm going to videotape it. Like, no, not like that. He just gave a little peek into his life, which in his situation, being so introverted and loves to play video games, cool. The whole Call of Duty thing is a joke. But that was his way of showing, I'm meeting you in the middle. I'm trying. And that spoke volumes. I'm not glamorizing this. He's let us in. I used to go, I don't go to, I used to go to every home game, sit in the press box, go interview and stuff like that. He didn't look like he was just going through the motions for the last couple of years, especially after losses. This year, he's playing free. He's playing like he was supported. He was playing like he trusted those around him, namely the coaching staff. He was playing like a mature version of himself. Now, is it sustainable? I think there's never been a point in his life on the football field where he had to lead by any other way than example, because he was always the best player on the field. Always. And not everybody's just a born leader. He leads in his own way. Larry Fitzgerald, was quiet. He was never really a rah-rah guy, led by example. But for a quarterback, I think a switch clicked on for Kyler Murray where it's like, okay, I need to do more. I need to do things differently. And the bromance between him and Gannon and Monti Ossenfort, last year, we would have found out right away if it wasn't working. They weren't doing jack right last year with win-loss. You beat Philly, almost beat Seattle, beat Atlanta, almost beat Houston. There's games where they were competitive, but it's like how things are going when things are going poorly interpersonally, that tells everything. And when excrement hit the fan with the last regime, everything fell off. It's easy to be friends when things are going well. It's not easy when you can't find out what the problem was. And that was my biggest theme for the Arizona Cardinals in 2021 and 2022 before Kyler Murray got hurt. The only thing that's worse than having a problem is not knowing what the problem is. Now, with this coaching staff and GM and a matured Kyler Murray, I have a very sneaking suspicion that when things go wrong, they'll be able to find the root of it, mend it, and become stronger afterwards. That is the biggest difference. And if this was 2019 or 2020 Kyler Murray, I don't know if that would have been the case. He's maturing at the right time. It takes people longer at times, especially with a guy who just comes in. He's the best football player in the history of the state of Texas. Went to Oklahoma and just balled out. He was 20. They spotted Alabama 21 points in the conference champion in the CFP. Kyler Murray was the best player on the field for the remaining 3 quarters. Okay. Sometimes it takes longer. But I'd rather this than see a flash early and never see it again. The Cardinals are in the best position they've ever been to have sustained success. And the fact that Kyler Murray is maturing the way he has over the last year during his first major injury of his career and becoming closer with this team and his coaching staff, that's the win. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Without you, there is no me. Remember that. Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus joins me tomorrow. I'll talk to you then.